The chain came apart under his blade with a sound like a snapped bone. The orc woman didn't move. Behind her, two small shapes pressed close, their wrists bound, their eyes too wide for the dark. One of the raiders shouted from across the clearing, "That cargo is mine!" Roan did not look up. He cut the second link, then the third. "Not anymore," he said. By morning, the road to his gate would carry more than he could turn away. He had not meant to be on that road at all. The farm sat at the end of a track that no one took twice. Broken fences, sagging roof, dead fields. Roan had bought it cheap because cheap was what he had, and because no one else wanted ground that had buried everything once already. He rose before the sun each day and worked until his hands ached. He could fix a fence, he could patch a roof, he could plant in dead soil if it came to that. He had done harder things. The work was not the hard part. The quiet was. His wife had been gone 3 winters. The fever took her in a week, fast and without mercy, and the bed had been too wide ever since. He did not say her name aloud any more. He had stopped expecting the floor of the house to creak under a second set of feet. Grief is not something that waits until you are ready. It comes when it comes, and then it stays. He kept one thing of hers, a smooth grey stone she had carried in her apron, worn round by a river neither of them had ever seen. He turned it in his pocket when his thoughts ran somewhere he did not want them. It was not comfort, not exactly. It was more like a hand on a fence post in the dark, something to tell him where he stood. The land didn't care that he was alone. It needed the same labour either way. He mended the near fence board by board, stone by stone, the way a man does when his hands need something to hold. He hauled water from the well at first light and watched the bucket break the black surface and come up cold. The ridge stood east of the house, dark against the rising sun, and he had learned not to look at it long. Things came down off that ridge. He preferred not to think about what. That morning, he had ridden out only for nails and salt. He took the long way, past the dry brush and the red rock, because the long way had no people on it. That was the whole of his plan. Buy what he needed. Say nothing to anyone. Come home before dark and eat alone, the way he had eaten for 3 years. Then he heard the chains. He should have ridden on. A wiser man would have. He sat his horse at the edge of the clearing and counted what he saw. A wagon. Iron rings bolted to its bed. Men with the easy cruelty of people who sold what breathed, and 3 figures chained in the open sun, one tall and still, 2 small and shaking. He looked at them for a long time. He did not decide anything. He simply got down off the horse and drew the knife he used for fence wire and walked toward the wagon as if he had every right to be there. The orc woman watched him come. Her eyes were steady, not pleading, not hopeful, just measuring, the way you measure a stranger before you know what he is. He knelt at the wagon bed and set the blade to the first link. Before the chains, there were the mornings, and the mornings were all the same. Roan woke in the dark, out of habit, not need. He lay still for a moment and listened to the house. A house tells you things if you have lived alone in it long enough. The settle of cold wood. The wind finding the gap above the door he had never gotten around to sealing. No other breathing. He had stopped reaching across the bed sometime in the 2nd winter. The part of him that used to reach had gone quiet, and he had not tried to wake it. He built the fire first. He had learned to do it without thinking, the kindling laid in a small cross, the coal from the night before, fanned until it caught. The flame threw light up the walls and made the empty room look almost lived in. Then he set one bowl on the table, one spoon. He had given the other away to a tinker who passed through, because 2 of a thing in a house meant for 2 was a hard thing to look at every day. The well came next. He hauled the bucket up, hand over hand, and watched it break the black surface and come back cold enough to ache. He drank standing at the lip of it, while the sky went grey in the east. The ridge stood there in the half-light, dark and patient, and he gave it the same short look he always gave it, and then turned his back. The land took the rest of the day. There was always more of it than there was of him. He mended the near fence where the frost had heaved the posts, working board by board, stone by stone, the way a man works when his hands need something to hold and his head needs somewhere to put itself. He cleared the dead growth from the south field. The soil came up grey and tired in his fingers. He had planted it once and watched nothing come, and he meant to plant it again, because trying was a kind of company. In the afternoon, the wind dropped, and the quiet got worse. The silence was the worst part. It was not peace. It was the absence of a voice he had known the shape of for 11 years. She had carried a stone in her apron, a smooth grey thing, worn round by some river, the kind of weight a stone has after it has been under water a long time. He had found it in the pocket after, when he was folding the apron to put it away, and he had not been able to put the stone away with it. Now it lived in his own pocket. He turned it sometimes when his thoughts ran toward the wide bed or the second spoon. It did not fix anything. It was just something solid to hold, and some days that was enough. People did not come out this far, and that suited him. The track to the farm was rough and led nowhere a man would want to be. Once a month he rode in for what the land could not give him: nails, salt, a little flour. He spoke to no one beyond the trade, paid in coin, and rode home before the light failed. That was the whole of his dealings with the world. He had decided that the world had taken what it was going to take from him, and that he would give it no further chances. He was wrong about that. He just did not know it yet. That evening he sat by the fire with the stone in his hand and listened to the house say nothing back. Tomorrow he would need salt. Tomorrow he would take the long way, the one with no people on it. He did not yet know what the long way held. The first link gave, and then he was committed, whether he had meant to be or not. The orc woman knelt very still while he worked. She was tall, even folded down against the wagon bed, taller than any man in the clearing. Her hands were bound, but her eyes were not. They tracked the knife, then his face, then the men behind him, in that order. She said nothing. She did not need to. A person who has been sold learns to spend words carefully. The two small ones pressed into her side. Twins, near enough the same height that he could not tell which was older. Their wrists were rubbed raw under the iron. One of them made a sound, low in the throat, and the mother shifted to put herself between the child and the men. She did it without looking. She had done it before. "You are making a mistake," the raider said. He had come halfway across the clearing, a heavy man with a quirt and 3 others fanning out behind him. "That is 3 head of stock, paid for. You cut them loose. You are stealing from me." Roan kept his eyes on the chain. "They are not stock. Out here they are whatever I say they are." He worked the blade into the second link and twisted. The iron was old and came apart easier than it should have. He moved to the third. He did not hurry. Hurrying was how a man got careless, and careless was how a man got dead. "Last warning," the raider said. Roan stood up then. He was not a big man, but he had buried a wife and 3 years of quiet, and there was very little left in him that a man with a quirt could frighten. He counted, silently, the way you count fence posts before you know if a line will hold. 4. One of him. A wagon between. "You can take this how you want," Roan said. His voice was low and level, not a threat, a fact. "I am cutting these chains. You ride off and tell yourself you lost some cargo to a fool, or you come at me, and maybe you win, and maybe 1 or 2 of you do not ride home. That is the whole of it." The raider's eyes moved. To the knife. To the woman, risen now to her full height, which was a great deal of height. To the wide empty land where no law would come, asking after 4 men who went missing on a road no one took. Something moved across his face. Not fear, exactly. More like arithmetic. He sold what breathed because it was easy, and this had stopped being easy. "She is not worth dying over," one of the others said quietly. The heavy man stood a moment longer. Then he spat in the dust and turned, and the calculation did not come out in his favor. "Keep the freight," he said. He climbed onto the empty wagon and took up the reins, and the four of them rolled out without looking back, the way men leave a thing they have decided to pretend they never wanted. Then the dust settled, and Roan was alone in an open field with 3 orcs he had just made his problem. He cut the last chain. The iron fell into the dirt. He stepped back and gave them room, because a freed thing needs room more than thanks. The woman rubbed her wrists. She looked at him for a long time, and what was in her face was not gratitude. It was harder to name. It was the look of someone who had stopped waiting for the floor to fall and was not yet sure it would not. "Why?" she said. One word, low and careful. He had no good answer. He looked at the children, at their raw wrists, at the road the wagon had gone down. "Did not seem right," he said. That's all. It was not all, but it was as much as he had words for. They followed him because they had nowhere else to go, and that was not the same as trust. The walk to the farm took most of the afternoon. Roan went ahead on foot, leading the horse, and the woman came behind with a child at each side. She kept a distance he could have measured with a rope and never let it shorten. When he slowed, she slowed. When he stopped to let the horse drink, she stopped too, well back, and put her body between the children and his. He did not take it as insult. It was the sense of a creature that has learned what people are. He watched her without seeming to. She was tall, taller than the door frame would prove to be, with black hair gone matted from the road, and shoulders built for work the chains had not let her do. The children had her coloring and her wariness. One walked with a slight drag in the left foot, favoring it, and tried to hide the favoring whenever it caught him looking. The farm came up out of the dusk the way it always did, low and broken against the dead fields. He stopped at the gate. "This is it," he said, "such as it is." She looked at the sagging roof and the leaning fence and the dark windows, and something in her shoulders eased a fraction. A ruin was less frightening than a fine house. A ruin meant a man with nothing to guard but himself. He did not ask them inside. He opened the barn instead, the one structure with a sound roof, and forked down clean straw into the dry corner. "You can have this," he said. "Door bars from the inside. I will not come in at night." He set it down plain, like a fact about the weather. Then he stepped back through the door and left it wide so she could see he was not closing anything on them. She stood in the barn a long moment, reading it. The exits, the shadows. The man framed in the doorway with his empty hands hanging loose. The children pressed against her legs. The one with the bad foot looked at the straw the way a hungry man looks at bread. "What do you want?" she said. Her voice was low and careful, not a threat, a fact, the same flat steadiness she had used in the clearing. "Men do not feed what they do not mean to use." "I am not most men," Rowan said, "and I am not feeding you yet. That is straw, not supper." He almost smiled and did not. "Supper is later if you want it. Outside, no one has to come in for it." She did not answer. She did not need to. She moved the children into the dry corner where the straw was, and set herself between them and the open door, and waited to see whether the night would prove him a liar. He went out and split wood he did not need, where she could see him, until the light was gone. It was not a thing he could have explained. It was only that a person braced for a blow watches the hands, and he wanted his hands to be doing something honest. When full dark came, he carried out a pot of beans and set it on the stump halfway between the barn and the house. 2 bowls, then a third, because the children were 2 and the woman was 1, and he had counted wrong, And he went back for the spoon he had given to the tinker and did not have, and brought a wooden ladle instead. He set it all down and walked back to his porch and sat, far off, and did not watch. After a while the barn door opened, not all the way, just enough. It was not trust, not yet. But it was the possibility of it, and out here that was more than he had had in 3 years. They ate the beans in the dark, and in the morning they were still there, and that settled the first question. Roan came out at first light to find the bowls washed and stacked on the stump, and the ladle laid across them, clean. He had not asked for that. He stood looking at it for a moment. It was not thanks. It was something more careful than thanks. It was a person showing she paid what she took. The woman stood in the barn door, with the low sun behind her. The children watched from the straw, 2 pairs of eyes in the dark. "We will not stay long," she said. "When the small ones are stronger, we will go north. There is country up there that does not keep our kind in chains." She paused. "Until then, we do not take what we do not earn. Tell us the work." He thought about it. He was not a man who liked terms, but terms were a thing she could hold, and she needed something to hold. "Fence wants mending," he said. "Roof. The south field has to be cleared before I can plant it. I do the heavy of it. You do what you want of the rest, and I feed you for it. No one comes in the house. No one comes in the barn but you. That is the whole of the arrangement. And if we go through your things in the night? There is nothing in there worth going through," he said. And that was true, and she heard that it was true. She was quiet a moment. "Naylor," she said at last, just the one word. She did not offer a hand. A name was the most she was willing to set down between them, and she set it down the way you set down something you might have to snatch back. "Roan," he said. That was the whole of the bargain. No paper, no shake. 2 names and a list of work. They began that day. She could lift what 2 men could not, and she did it without being told twice, hauling the heaved fence posts upright while he drove the wedges home. They worked apart more than together, each watching the other from the tail of an eye. But the work got done, and work done is its own kind of talking. The children kept to the barn at first. By afternoon, the bolder of the 2 had crept to the edge of the yard to watch. He was small and thin, and had his mother's flat measuring look, and he held it on Roan for a long time before something in it gave way to plain curiosity. "Is the well deep?" the boy asked. "Deep enough," Roan said. "Are there fish in it?" "No fish, just cold water." The boy considered this with great seriousness. "There could be fish," he said. "You don't know." And he went back to the barn, satisfied, having won the point. Roan stood with the wedge in his hand and felt something he had no name for. Not quite warmth. More like the first give in frozen ground, the part of the year where nothing has changed yet, but the change has started somewhere underneath. He did not let it show. He went back to the posts. That night he set out 3 bowls without miscounting, and a 4th he kept for himself, and he ate on the porch while they ate at the barn, the distance between them no shorter, but agreed upon now, which was different. The arrangement held. It was not a family. The word was far too large for what this was. It was 4 people on a broken farm, keeping a bargain, and for now that was enough. Trust did not arrive. It was built the way the fence was built, 1 post at a time, and it took about as long. On the 3rd day, Rowan left a strip of dried meat on the stump and walked away without a word. It was gone within the hour. He did not mention it, and neither did she. But the next morning, there was a row of the south field cleared that he had not cleared himself. The dead growth pulled and stacked in a neat line. A trade made without either of them, naming it a trade. On the 4th day, the smaller twin would not put weight on the bad foot at all. Rowan saw it from across the yard, the boy hopping and then sitting hard in the dust, and the way Nyla's face went still when she lifted him. She unwound the rag around his ankle. The skin underneath was hot and shining, swollen tight, an old, wrong-set hurt gone bad from the road and the iron. She knew it was bad. She did not know what to do about it, and not knowing was a thing she clearly hated. Roan went into the house and came back with what he had. Clean cloth, a jar of the grey salve he kept for the horse's legs and his own split knuckles, a basin. He set them on the stump and stepped back, the way he set everything down, plain and at a distance. "Soak it warm," he said, "twice a day. The swelling has to come down before the foot can set right. The salve draws the heat." He paused. "I can show you, or you can do it. Your choice." Nyla looked at the jar a long moment. Then she carried the boy to the stump herself and set his foot in the warm water and watched Rowan's hands while he showed her once how to work the salve in without pressing the tender center. After that she did it. She did not hand the child to him, but she let him stand close enough to show her, and for her. That was a great distance crossed. The boy bore it with his jaw set, and to take his mind off it, Roan asked him a question. "What is your name?" "Tomich," the boy said. "That one is Isa." He pointed at his sister, who was up a fence post, watching like a cat. "She is older by a little. She says it is by a lot, but it is by a little." "It is by a lot," Isa said from the post. "You were both born the same day," Tomich said, with the patience of a much-wronged man. Mother said, "That is not a lot." "It is a lot if I came first." Roan said nothing. He let it run. There was no fixing an argument like that, and no need to, and a child arguing about minutes was the sound of a child who had stopped, for a moment, being afraid. That was worth more than winning. By the 6th day the swelling had gone down. Tomich put weight on the foot and grinned like he had invented walking. Isa pretended not to care and watched him the whole time. That evening Nyla washed the basin and the cloth and set them back on the stump, clean, the way she returned everything. But this time she did not go straight back to the barn. She stood at the edge of the porch light, just outside it, and looked at him for a moment. "You did not have to," she said. "No," Roan said. "I didn't." She nodded once, as if that were the right answer, the only honest one, and went back to the barn. He sat a while longer with the stone in his hand, and turned it over and did not think about the wide bed at all, which had not happened in 3 years. The frozen ground had given a little more. He could feel it. He did not say so. Some things you do not say out loud for fear of where they might go. The night it finally came out, the children were already asleep in the barn, and the fire had burned down to the slow red part where men say things they would not say in daylight. Nyla came to the porch on her own. She had not done that before. She sat on the bottom step, well apart, and looked at the coals instead of at him. That was how he knew she meant to talk. A person looks at the fire when the words are hard to look at. "The small one's father is dead," she said. No lead-up, the way you state weather. "He went under the same raid that took us. He told me to run, and he stood in the gap so we could. I got 50 paces. Then the chains." She was quiet a moment. "I have spent every day since deciding whether that was brave or only foolish. I have not decided." Rowan turned the stone over in his pocket. He did not take it out. "Not yet. My wife is 3 winters dead," he said. It was the first time he had said it to a living soul. "Fever. A week, start to end. No raid, no gap to stand in. Just a thing in the blood I could not reach." He looked at the fire. "I have spent every day since deciding whether staying out here alone was grief or only hiding. I have not decided either." Nyla looked at him then. Something passed between them that was not pity on either side. Pity needs one person above the other. This was level. Two people who had each lost the center of a life, comparing the shape of the whole. You kept something of hers, Nyla said. It was not a question. She had watched his hand go to his pocket too many times. He took the stone out. He had never shown it to anyone. It sat grey and smooth in his palm in the firelight, worn round by a river neither of them would ever see. She carried it, he said. I do not know why. I never asked, and now I cannot. He turned it once. Stupid thing to keep. No, Nyla said. It is the opposite of stupid. It is the only thing you let yourself feel it through. She reached out, slowly, and touched the stone with 2 fingers. Lightly, the way she handled fragile things. She did not take it. She just touched it and gave it back to the keeping of his hand. We carry stones, too. Different stones. The same reason. He closed his fingers around it. For the first time, it did not feel like a wound he was pressing. It felt like a thing that could be set down and picked up again by choice. He did not say so. They sat a long time after that, not talking, the fire going to ash between them. The silence was not the bad kind anymore, the kind that had filled his house for 3 years. This was the other kind, the kind 2 people make together on purpose. North, he said at last. You still mean to go. When the small ones are strong, she paused. Tomek walks now, grins like a fool about it. He does. That is your doing. That is the salve, Rowan said. It is not the salve. She stood, all of her, tall against the dying light, without any of the wariness that had been in her since the clearing. I know the difference now between a man who feeds what he means to use and a man who does not. You taught me there was a difference. That is not nothing. She went back to the barn. He sat with the cold stone warming in his fist and understood that the part of him braced for years had, somewhere in these weeks, gone quiet. He had not noticed it go. That was how he knew it was real. Grief does not announce its leaving. It just, one night by a low fire, is a little less than it was. The official came on a Tuesday, alone, on a tired grey horse, and he did not look like trouble. That was the thing about trouble. It rarely announced itself. Rowan saw the dust on the track before he saw the man. He set down the hammer and walked to the gate and stood there, the way you stand when you want a thing stopped at your line. Behind him, in the yard, Nyla went still. The children went into the barn without being told. They had learned that much already. The man drew up at the gate. He was middle-aged and dusty, and carried a leather satchel of the kind that holds papers, not weapons. He looked at the mended fence, the cleared field, the smoke from the chimney, and then at the tall figure standing in the yard, and his face did a small, careful thing that was not quite surprise. Land office, he said. Routine ride. You are the new holder out here. He did not make it a question. He had the deed numbers already. I am, Rowan said. And those. The man nodded toward the barn, toward Nyla, who had not moved. There is no law against hiring labor. There is paper, though, for housing folk of their kind, on registered ground. Counts. A head tax, some places. Depends who is asking. He pulled a stub of pencil from the satchel. I am only asking what is here. That is the whole of my job. I write down what is, and I ride on. Rowan thought about lying. It would have been easy, and it would have been a mistake. A lie is a thing a man can come back and pull on later. A woman and 2 children, he said. They work the land. They eat what they earn. They harm no one, and they are leaving north before winter. The man wrote it down. He did not editorialize. He looked once more at Nyla, at the level way she held his eyes. Not a threat, just a fact of standing. And something in him seemed to decide she was not his concern. For what it is worth, he said, closing the satchel. I do not much care who breaks ground out here, so long as the ground gets broken. He gathered the reins. Then he paused, and for the first time, his plain official voice dropped into something lower. The voice of a man giving a warning he is not paid to give. "There is a company been asking after a lost shipment," he said, "down at the river crossing. 3 head, they say. A woman and 2 young." He let that sit. "I do not know that it is anything to you. But they are not the Land Office, and they do not write things in a book. If it were me, I would want my fences high and my people close before they ride this way." Rowan said nothing. The cold needle was already at the back of his neck, the kind that warns you when something is coming. "Obliged," he said. The man touched his hat and turned the grey horse and rode back the way he had come, growing small against the dry brush. Rowan watched until the dust settled. Nyla came up beside him at the gate. She had heard. He did not have to tell her. "The same ones," she said. Not a question. Maybe just men like them. He looked east at the ridge, where things came down. "Either way they are coming." She was quiet a moment. The level steadiness was still in her, but under it, for the first time since the clearing, he saw the old braced thing wake back up. "Then we do not run," she said. "No," Rowan said. "We do not." It was the first time he had said we, and meant the 4 of them. He noticed it. He did not point it out. "Some things you keep, like a stone in a pocket, until you are sure of them." They came on the 3rd morning after the official, and there were more of them than the road had ever carried at once. Rowan counted from the porch, 12 riders, maybe more, strung out along the track in no hurry, which was its own kind of threat. Men in no hurry are men who think they have already won. At the front rode the heavy man from the clearing, the one with the quirt, and beside him a leaner figure who sat his horse like he owned the dirt under it. Rowan did not run for anything. He had learned in the army that the man who reaches first in the dark is rarely the one who walks away. He set the stone in his pocket and walked down to the gate and stood at it, hands loose and empty. Nyla came out behind him. He had not called her. She came anyway and stood at his shoulder, all of her height, and the morning sun put her shadow across the gate longer than the fence. Then Tomek and Isa came too, small and silent, and Nyla moved without looking and put them behind her legs. The 4 of them made a short line at the gate. It was not much of a wall, but it was the whole of what they had, and they put it where it could be seen. The riders drew up. The lean man let the quiet stretch. He was good at it. "You have something of ours," he said at last. "A woman. 2 whelps. Cargo, signed and paid. We do not let cargo walk off." He smiled without any warmth in it. "Hand it over and we ride. Simple as that. No one needs to bleed over freight." "They are not freight," Rowan said. "And they are not yours. You lost them on a road, fair, the way a careless man loses anything." "I bought them? You stole them. There is no paper in the world makes that clean." Rowan's voice did not rise. "They live here now. They leave when they choose, north, on their own feet. Not in your chains." The lean man looked at him a long moment, and then past him, at the orc woman who had not moved and did not look away, and at the 2 children behind her, and something in his face hardened into figures. He was counting. The fence, the house, the 1 man. The numbers were good. The numbers were very good, and that was what made the smile come back. 12 of us, he said softly. 1 of you, and a breeder. Not 1 horse moved. Not 1 rider shifted in the saddle. Nyla did not flinch at the word. She had been called worse and survived all of it, and she stood there and let it fall off her like rain off stone. "You can count," Rowan said, "so count this too. Whatever you do here, some of you do not ride home. Maybe most of you. A thing like that gets told at every crossing from here to the sea. The men who lost half a company to 1 farmer over freight, they could not even keep. He paused. How is that for a paper? How does that read? The lean man's smile thinned. The arithmetic had gotten complicated, and he was a man who liked it simple. We will see how brave you talk tomorrow, he said. He turned his horse. We will be back. Daylight. Bring it out yourself, or we come through the fence and take it, and then there is no walking off north for anyone. They rode back down the track and made camp in plain sight, just past the ridge, where the smoke of their fire could be seen from the yard. A pressure, set where it would be felt all night. Roan watched the smoke. Naylor watched it beside him. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow, he agreed. And the night came down with the fire still burning out past the fence, and neither of them slept. The raiders came at first light, and so did the others, and only one of those two things had been expected. Roan stood at the gate as the dust rose on the track. Naylor stood at his shoulder. The children were in the house this time, behind a barred door, because some lines you hold yourself. The 12 riders came on at a walk, the lean man at the front, sure of his numbers, sure of the morning. Then his horse stopped, and he was not looking at the gate anymore. He was looking past it, east, at the ridge. Roan turned. They came down off the high ground, the way water comes down a wash, without hurry, and without a sound a man could fix on. Orcs. Mounted and afoot, spears and old iron and faces painted for a thing they had ridden a long way to do. Roan counted out of habit, and stopped at 40. 40 warriors strung along the ridge, and at their head a grey-haired one with a scar that split an eyebrow, who rode straight for the gate and never once looked at the raiders. Naylor made a sound he had not heard from her. Low. Cracked open. My mother's people, she said. The road north. Word travels the road north. She had sent no message. She had not needed to. A freed thing, walking free where the chained are counted, is its own message, and it had run ahead of her up every crossing to the sea. The grey-haired warrior reined up at the fence. He looked at Naylor a long moment, taking the count of her, the children's faces at the window, the mended fence, the man beside her with empty hands. Then he looked at Roan, and what he did next he did slowly, so that all 40 behind him, and all 12 before him, would see it plain. He got down off his horse, and he knelt, one knee in the dust at Roan's gate, and behind him, in a long, ragged wave down the ridge, the others knelt too, 40 of them, spears grounded, heads bowed at the gate of a broken farm. It was not worship. It was not debt. Not quite. It was the oldest thing their kind had, the thing owed to one who cuts the chain when he had no blood reason to lift the knife. They had come to pay it, and they were paying it in the only coin that could not be stolen. The lean man on his horse went very still. He had brought 12 to take 3. He sat now before 50-some, and one farmer and a woman at her full height who was not afraid of him, and never would be again. Something moved across his face. Not fear, exactly. The recognition that this was a different kind of ground than he had ridden onto. He was a man who liked his arithmetic simple, and there was nothing simple left here. There was no number in it that came out his way. He pulled his reins. Freight is not worth this, he said, to no one, to himself. The quirt hung useless in his hand. No, Roan agreed. It never was. The raiders turned their horses. They went back down the track at a walk that wanted badly to be a run, and would not let itself. 12 men carrying the story Roan had promised them, the one that would be told at every crossing, the one where they rode away. Then it was quiet. The grey-haired one rose and put his fist to his chest and said a word in a tongue Roan didn't know, and didn't need to. Some things you understand without the words. Naylor was weeping without sound, the way the very strong weep. Roan stood with the stone in his pocket and his empty hands at his sides, and understood that he had cut one chain on a road weeks ago, and had no idea, none at all, how far the cut would run. Spring did not arrive all at once. It came the way trust had come, a little at a time, until one morning the south field was green, and no one could say which day it had turned. The road north stayed a road north. Nyla did not take it. Her mother's people made their camp out past the ridge, where the raiders' fire had once burned, and the smoke that rose from it now was a different kind of smoke. Some of them moved on with the season. A handful stayed within a day's ride, close enough that the farm was no longer a farm at the end of a track no one took. Now there were riders on that track who came in peace, and that was a thing Rowan was still learning to leave his hands easy about. The field he had planted came up. He had planted it once before and watched nothing grow, and he had told himself trying was a kind of company, and it turned out he had been right twice over. The seed took. So had the rest of it. Tomek ran the whole farm now on 2 good feet, and told anyone who would hold still a story about a fish in the well that grew longer every telling. By the end of spring the fish was the size of a horse, and had opinions. No one corrected him. Isa corrected the details, and not the fish, which was its own kind of believing. They slept in the house now. The barn was for the horse again. It had happened without a day you could name, the same as the field. He set 4 bowls at the table without thinking, and then 5 when the grey-haired warrior rode in, and the counting that had once been a wound was just counting now. He had given a spoon away once, because 2 of a thing in a house meant for 2 was hard to look at. He bought new spoons in town, and did not flinch buying them. One evening Nyla found him on the porch with the stone in his hand. She sat beside him, not on the step now, beside him, and that was its own small map of how far they had come. "You still carry it," she said. "I do." He turned it over. It was the same grey stone, worn round by a river neither of them would see. But it did not sit in his palm the way it used to. It had been a thing he held, so the grief would have somewhere to live. Now it was just a thing she had loved, kept by a man who could finally hold it without bleeding. The weight had changed, the stone had not. He had. She would not mind, Nyla said. You keeping it, and the rest of this. No, Rowan said. I do not think she would. It was not a family. The word was too small and too large at once for what it was. It was a man and a woman, and 2 children, and a stone, and a green field, and a camp of kin past the ridge where a cruel fire used to burn. It was built from the pieces that were left, the way he had built the fence, board by board until it held. He put the stone back in his pocket. Not to hide it, just to keep it, the way you keep what matters close, where your hand can find it in the dark. The sun went down, gold over the field he had been told would never grow. Tomek was telling Isa about the fish. The fire past the ridge was a friendly light now. For a long time, Rowan sat and didn't say anything, and for the first time in 3 years, the quiet did not feel like something missing. It felt like something kept. By midsummer, the farm at the end of the track no one took was a place people came to on purpose. It was a small thing, as places go. A mended fence, a green field that had been told it was dead, a house with a worn step where 2 children ran in and out all day, and a stone on the sill that a man had finally set down somewhere he could see it instead of carrying it like a wound. Nyla worked the near rows in the long gold light. Tomek and Isa chased each other around the well that had no fish, and to hear them tell it, a great many. The grey-haired warrior had taught Tomek to sit a horse, and the boy fell off it daily and got back on daily, which was its own small lesson nobody had to name. In the evenings they ate together, all of them, more bowls on the table than Rowan had owned in years, and the talk ran easy, and the quiet between the talk was the good kind. He had built it from the pieces that were left. He had not known, that morning on the road with a knife in his hand, that a single cut could grow a whole green thing. He knew it now. Some seeds you do not know you have planted, until they come up. He stood at the gate one last time as the sun went down, the way he had stood at it, the day the chains came, the day the official came, the day 40 warriors knelt in the dust. The gate was just a gate now, a line between what was his and what was not, and what was his had gotten larger and warmer than he had ever meant to let it. But the world beyond the fence had not finished moving. Far off, where the track met the open country, a rider sat a horse against the last of the light, just one. Watching the farm, or only resting, there was no way to tell at that distance. Nyla came to stand beside him and followed his eyes to the small, dark shape on the rim of the world. "Friend or trouble?" she said. "Cannot tell yet," Rowan said. He did not reach for anything. He had learned that the man who waits, who lets the dark show him what it holds before he moves, is rarely the one who falls. "We will know when it comes closer." The rider did not come closer. Not that night. It turned its horse and went down the far side of the rise and was gone, and whether it carried another chain to cut or another kind of trouble entirely, the farm did not yet know. Behind them the children were laughing in the yard. The fire past the ridge was a friendly light now, low and steady against the dark. The stone sat on the sill where the last of the sun still touched it, grey and smooth and finally still. Some things were finished. Some had only started. That was the shape of a life out here. You cut what chains you could reach, and you held what you built, and you watched the road, and you were not alone while you watched it. That was enough. For now, that was more than enough. Did you enjoy the story? Subscribe to the channel to watch more stories like this one. Leave a like, it helps the channel a lot. And drop a comment down below. I always read them and use your feedback to make our content better. Thanks so much.